Hewitts.com. Good morning. If you're watching on Univision, good morning. Wherever you are, good morning. Going to be another rough day on Wall Street as Europe is deep into the red with Germany down 1% and England almost down 1%. They tried to rally briefly at their open. They could not. I don't know where the market will be by the end of the day, but I suspect more bleeding is in store. The fact that the Wall Street Journal headline, global stocks stabilize after deep sell-off, is already old news. It was published at 4:14 this morning. It's already old news. That turned around. Gold has surged again, and the 10-year Treasury has fallen to, get this, 1.38%. If you have ever wanted to buy a home, call andrewandtodd.com today at 888-888-1172. They are with the Sierra Pacific Mortgage, but it's best to just go to their website, andrewandtodd.com, because the only people who are winning in this right now are people who want to buy property. The only people who are winning are people who want to refinance their house. Because as money pours into the United States, the 10-year Treasury is now inverted with a 3-month Treasury. The 10-year Treasury is paying 1.38%, and the 3-month Treasury is paying 1.5%. By the way, big recession signal. Light crude down to $51 a barrel this morning. It's a bloodbath on Wall Street. And why is that? Because we don't know what's going to happen. Absolutely uncertainty is what is driving this, and uncertainty will continue to drive it for as long as there remains no clear cure. A vaccine will not help. There's news of a vaccine. I'll explore that a little bit later in the show. There's news of a vaccine out there. A vaccine will not matter to markets because a vaccine will take too long to manufacture and distribute. You need a cure for the most chronic versions. Yesterday, I saw scientists estimate between 40 and 70% of the world's population will acquire coronavirus at some point. That is in keeping with the 1918 influenza epidemic, between 40 and 70%. However, many people won't even know they have it. It will feel like a common cold, but 2% of people will die if the most current estimates are true. And so I would just tell you that the thing to look for is not news of a vaccine, which is a great long-term solution, but news of an effective intervention that stops the progress of the worst 10 to 15% of the cases, which end in terrible illness or mortality. By the way, the Telegraph this morning in Great Britain, quote, ouch, the world's 500 richest people lost a combined $139 billion on Monday as markets tanked amid coronavirus fears. That's right. That's how bad the bloodbath was yesterday. And you know the numbers. It was down 1,000 points plus, and I don't need to review that with you. Let's go on with the rundown. Trump is having a wonderful time with Modi. The president and the prime minister are in India having a great time. Nevada's reputation as a Democrat caucus state is ruined as the results continue to be screwed up, but Bernie won going away, and Bernie's going to win in South Carolina, I think. Joe Biden is about to try and stage a late comeback, but then he got up on the stage. Honest to goodness, sometimes Joe Biden just amazes me. On a stage yesterday, cut number 13, Joe Biden says this.
And folks, one of the things I'm proudest of is getting past, getting moved, getting control of the Paris Climate Accord. I'm the guy that came back after meeting with Deng Xiaoping and making the case that I believe China would join if we put pressure on them. We've got almost 200 nations to join.
Deng Xiaoping died 23 years ago. All right, Deng Xiaoping has never heard of global warming. Deng Xiaoping was a great, magnificent man with whom President Nixon treated, and of course, the second greatest leader in modern China's history. If we use the term great just in terms of significance, Mao was great, but he was an evil man. Deng Xiaoping was dead 23 years, but Joe Biden gets up and says this, cut number 13.
And folks, one of the things I'm proudest of is getting past, getting moved, getting control of the Paris Climate Accord. I'm the guy that came back after meeting with Deng Xiaoping and making the case that
all right, so
I believe
you say
China
that's
would...
just another Joe flub. No, there's something wrong. There's just something wrong, and people know that. People who like Joe Biden a lot just know he should not have run. He is not up to this task. He is too old. Unlike Bernie Sanders, unlike Elizabeth Warren, unlike Donald Trump, he has lost the crucial step. There will be votes today in the United States Senate on the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act and the Born Alive Survivors Protection Act. That will tell you who is pro-life and who is not. And then the key part of the rundown this morning is my new Washington Post column, which is a summation. It's on the front page of the Washington Post today at the landing page. Hundreds of comments, of course, agreeing with me. It's a summation of what I've been telling you in the rundown and on other segments of the Hugh Hewitts Show for 5 weeks. I quote, "Serial under response was the tragic story of U.S. and global reaction to the mislabeled Spanish flu of 1918. That pandemic claimed at least 675,000 lives in the United States and as many as 100 million around the world. The best guess is that the carnage of a century ago started in all places, rural Kansas, not Spain. What isn't a guess is that the vast and efficient killing machine that strain of influenza became. Its lethal effectiveness should spur all nations, certainly those where scientific authorities' pronouncements are not subject to government manipulation. The narrator says Iran and the People's Republic of China, for example, ought to prompt them to preemptive and thoughtful action." This column is really written for Donald Trump and his team. Fear of creating panic and harming national morale during World War I led President Woodrow Wilson and his vast machinery of government to withhold facts about the flu. That's in 1918, Steelers fans. What citizens saw with their own eyes, corpses stacked on porches, a run on coffins, sudden and calamitous deaths of young, healthy military men not at the front lines but in cantonments in the United States, destroyed confidence in the government. Wilson was not an authoritarian the way that President Trump is routinely and hysterically accused of being by the chattering class. Wilson was a real deal authoritarian, one who jailed enemies and who controlled the press as well as an economy to an extent not seen before or since in the United States. A cursory read of John Barry's The Great Influenza, which President George W. Bush was seen carrying when fears of a bird flu pandemic surfaced in 2005 as a means of alerting the public towards useful background reading. The Great Influenza sketches Wilson's iron lock on the economy, dissent, and the propaganda apparatus of a nation at war. Wilson demanded the country follow him into the carnage in Europe, and he observed secrecy at home about the disease. There's no worse strategy than secrecy for safeguarding the public from a pandemic. It is true that panic is a threat, but secrecy and innuendo fuel panic. Whispers and rumors lead to hoarding, irrational behavior, economic upheaval. Already, the U.S. government is behind the curve despite Trump's demands that it get and remain ahead of coronavirus worries. Bureaucracies are not nimble. Even as talented a leadership team is assembled by Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar and assisted by his trusted medical expert, his National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Anthony Fauci, is likely to prove ineffective in the face of a pandemic's collision with social media. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Twitter account is almost a parody of a real-time news feed. The president needs to demand that the CDC and Azar's team move at least as fast as the coronavirus in publishing confirmed information on where and how severely the virus, COVID-19, has struck across the globe. Trump could be assisted in this effort by the oldest trick in the Beltway book, a special commission. Led by Vice President Pence, the commission could be co-chaired by a bipartisan group of the nation's smartest, most effective governors. Perhaps Arizona's Doug Ducey, Florida's Ron DeSantis, Rhode Island's Gina Raimondo, and include leaders of the great medical institutions such as Mayo and Cleveland Clinics, Mass General, MD Anderson. Should also include representatives from social media platforms and broad membership organizations such as the Service Employees International Union and Catholic Charities. The commission's purpose ought to be publicizing best practices and credentialing best information. Knocking down fake news and fake cures as well as hysteria and overblown estimates of fatality rates are crucial end in themselves. A virus can't be killed with words, I conclude. I'm skipping a few paragraphs. Go read it at the Washington Post for yourself. A virus can't be killed with words, but panic can be steamrolled with information. Hopefully, the Trump administration won't settle for business as usual because this isn't a usual flu. Better to be accused of overreaction then convicted later of indifference. Donald Trump, do not get your own Hurricane Katrina. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.